The following comparative study will examine the similarities and differences in the two films as seen through the lens of feminist theory, Persepolis and Clueless. Persepolis, based on the César Award-winning novel, is a late 2007 film directed by female director Marjane Satrapi. And the second film, Clueless, is a 1995 romantic comedy directed by Amy Heckerling. The films present us with two leading female protagonists, Cher Horowitz and Marjane Satrapi. Cher and Marjane both face similar conflict of finding their place in society as they come of age. As teenage girls, both women experiment with relationships, life decisions, and the idea of personal independence. While both films explored the aspects of life as a woman in society, they are set apart by their geographical and historical cultural contexts. Following the film theory of feminism, Clueless and Persepolis follow a coming-of-age story, while both dealing with the prominent female lead specter, guiding the feminist aspects of the story. Persepolis introduces its audience to Marjane Satrapi, who, despite living in the middle of a war and revolution, keeps her independent spirit and determination as she advances to adulthood. Marjane lives in a war-torn Iran during the fall of the Shah and the rise of Ayatollah, before being sent to Vienna, Austria by her parents for her own safety. Here, she has to adjust to the changes of culture and social standards around her. Marjane starts her life in the upper class, however close surveillance and constant fear of harm limit her freedom. She develops an independent spirit, not wanting to be held down. Her childhood was full of military intervention and social unrest. According to Warwick, the boom of oil found in the Middle West created this overwhelming power and controlling mindset in Iran. The United States viewed this immense power as a threat and danger, imposing oil and trade sanctions on Iran. Iran itself was facing a revolution of its own, as the Shah had lost the support of the people who began to rebel. The people wanted to reject a Western way of thinking, which started the Islamic Revolution, as a new Islam power came into control. As a result, the new Islamic power held a radical way of thinking, degrading the worth of women and creating the center of Marjane's story. Her story starts out as a young girl at the youthful age of 10. Being this young, Marjane is still innocent and does not view the extent of the dangers of her world, leading to violence first being hidden from the viewer. As her uncle Noosh tells her how his own uncle was executed, the guns rise to shoot him. However, no gore or blood is shown, only a black and white cloud. A young child blocks out the violence she is uncertain of. Yet, as Marjane begins to see the pain and hurt war brings, she invites the idea of blood into her stories, truly representing the events and the brutality that took place. The protagonist of Clueless, 16-year-old Cher, is placed in an entirely different social situation than Marjane. Set apart by geographical aspects, Cher lives in luxurious Beverly Hills, California, and receives everything handed to her on a silver platter. This is a direct contrast to Marjane's life, as she often struggled for expression despite having money. As set in the 90s, Clueless often is remembered by its raver style, which is seen through the film's characters. Color, as a prominent aspect of film, utilizes itself in Clueless through saturated colors, especially conveyed in Cher's infamous plaid yellow suit. Color in the 90s was important in the clothing industry, as it established identity for those who are still trying to discover it. Fashion also guides the plot, as it determines who fits the social standards and the teenage society, and the desire to change oneself to match these standards. Cher realizes the unfair life given her as she befriends Ty, a reject of high school society, who decides to turn her into a makeover project. She does this in believing she's projecting her talents and skills to benefit another, when in contrast, her ego is being benefited here, even though her intentions are not first presented as selfish. As an aspect of feminist theory, both films must pass the Bechdel test, and flawlessly do so. The Bechdel test has 3 questions a film must pass to be classified as a feminist film. Are there 2 or more women? Are they talking with each other? Are they talking about something other than men? In Clueless, Cher is often seen with her friends Diane and Ty. As Cher and Diane give Ty a tour of the school, there are many clique high school groups shown, like the Popular Boys and Nerds, which are references to the third wave of feminist film theory, which focus on cultural identities. The film is set around a romantic context, so men are talked about, yet Cher and Diane can often be seen discussing ways to boost their grades, with Cher mainly dismissing the idea of boyfriends and relationships throughout the majority of the film, allowing an independent mindset to be seen in Cher, and that she has other priorities in life besides men. Then Persepolis also accomplishes this independent woman mindset, as it builds a strong relationship of family and resilience between Marjane with her mother and grandmother. Men are rarely discussed in this film, and as they are, it is to display the misuse of women that they are displaying in their actions. According to Bianca Garner, the male gaze takes away from the human identity of females in film and excludes the woman's feelings and thoughts. The female characters in Persepolis are more focused on survival and living through war-torn times, as they realize the importance of the female bond. This is seen as Marjane views her first example of the verbal abuse of men. At the grocery store, Marjane's mother is labeled and harassed by a man. He calls her woman, and in defense, she says he is to be called man. In hatred, the man implies she should be raped instead of shown respect, setting a terrible view of men in the 1970s Tehran. Referring back to the historical cultural context, Clueless and Persepolis have around a 20-year difference from when the films are meant to take place in. Although Persepolis was made in 2007, the film follows the true story of Marjane Satrapi from the late 1970s to 1990s. It classifies under the second wave of feminism, which is represented under the private is the political mindset, and focuses on the equality and discrimination in the world. Persepolis displays these subjects as Marjane experiences life in Iran as a woman and constantly views the superior male demeanor in her society, viewing women being silenced from speaking their mind. Clueless displays the third wave of feminism, which comes into contrast with the second wave. Third wave focused on cultural identities and allowed people to express themselves without silencing unfamiliar voices. There was a true progression in this time, especially in the lives of young, underdeveloped teenagers. Cher and the other adolescent characters in the film experiment most love lives, and some abuse their own lives on substances such as drugs and tobacco. The teenage life varies as they try to figure out their place in society based on social class, gender, sexuality, and other categories of identity. Films that normally focused on the male gaze saw women as objects rather than people. This limited the control of women and made it difficult for them to take control of the scene. Despite Cher and Marjane constantly being labeled by society and told what is acceptable for them, both women decide to challenge these ideas, developing their character into the person who they are meant to be, in spite of being unsure at the moment. Cher and Marjane face the difficulties of being sexualized and scrutinized by society constantly throughout their films. In an interview with Manufacturing Industry, director Amy Heckerling describes Clueless as a film of empowered women who are still young and unsure of life, but hold a capable spirit. She explains how her film displays the ideal world for a woman to live in, but still confronts the difficult topics such as sexual abuse.
Do on TV. No. It's still those optimistic, empowered young girls, sort of cluelessly making their way through life. And the boyfriends and the father with the, sensible advice and having a lot of fun in, this fantasy world.
The messages sent are true about the teenage female life, and it is owed to Heckerling and Satrapi for realistically displaying how time and location affected the representation of the female experience in society. Thank you.